story that must be told. Here's a little story that must be told. Here's a little story. Here's a little story.
My name is Orb. My crew is Circle of Fire, So Shifters crew. I am originally from Las Vegas, LA, but I lived in Seattle for more than 20-something years. There was these kids that lived at the end of my block, and they would break, and they were like teenagers, and they had track Adidas suits on, and they would bring out the cardboard box and a boom box. My first rap song, I think it was Slick Rick. It was like, these guys are talking over the beat. They're not singing, but they're talking in poetry form. So it blew my mind to hear that, because my family, we listened to a lot of R&B, soul music. And so hip-hop was new on my radar back then. You know, I didn't even know what hip-hop was at that time. But my sisters, I grew up with 4 older sisters, and they danced. Dance and music was in my life before hip-hop was, in that sense of being exposed to it. As a kid, 5 years old, you know, I was trying to break. I was taking my mom's... she had the mall catalog magazines, and I would rip the magazines out and do hand spins on it at 5 or 6 years old, when I was trying to learn how to break, because there were glossy papers, and then we had carpet, so it with less friction on the carpet, so you could just spin forever. My mom would get pissed. Don't rip out my magazines. I'm still looking at those. The radio was always on in our house, especially weekends when we clean up the house and Sunday cleans. Yeah, music would be blasting. If it wasn't R&B, it was some gospel music or something. But when I was in Vegas in elementary, my father had got out of prison and stayed with us, and then he got into his situations and stuff, so he was always in and out of prison, and went back to prison, and that put my mom into a bind, and she couldn't afford her apartment, so we had to move back to LA. We were probably homeless for about a good year and a half out on the streets in LA, going from shelter to shelter. It was an eye-opener for me, because we've been broke and poor before, but that was the lowest of the low, and it really made me see what real struggle was like, and to take each day at a time, kind of thing. So it taught me a lot of patience, I guess, during that time, and compassion for other people that are in that situation. We would go from shelter to shelter, and each of these shelters, there would be somebody, a kid that in there that would be listening to hip hop. I remember this one white kid, and he was a dope rapper, and he was like one of his teen kids. He was older than me, and he was kind of schooling me on the rap game. I was too young to even be, impressed in the sense of like, did I want to do that myself? But that was kind of like my exposure to a rapper MC that like freestyled and freestyled off the top of his head and stuff. And I was probably only about 11 or 12 at that time. I was coming out of elementary, going into junior high school, and then I really started getting into hip hop at that point. My favorite rapper at that point was KRS-One and BDP, Boogie Down Productions, Poor Righteous Teachers, like all the positive, conscious, what we would call conscious rappers at that time. And it was only because I gravitated to that because I was tired of seeing what was out in the streets, the gangs and all that, which was flourishing at that time too, because you had Colors come out and all these different movies and whatnot, which I think too also heavily influenced a lot of youth in America too. And people don't like to talk about that kind of thing because it's kind of controversial. But so much of that was being played on the radio that I wanted an alternative to a positive side of music. So I gravitated to the more conscious rappers at that time. And when I listened to these rappers speak and the consciousness that came out of them, plus some of them were teaching about Black history. None of that was in our schools at the time. I didn't get Black history until probably like my sophomore year in high school. But when I listened to rappers at the time, and it was mainly East Coast rappers, that were, talking about kings and queens coming from Africa. And, all I thought was like, oh shit, we came from slavery, like is that where it stops there? We come from Africa and then slaves. So these other rappers were spitting consciousness, and I was like, wow, I gravitate to that. That's pretty dope. And the lyricism of how they put that into rhyme form over a dope beat. And some of these beats, they had like a jazzy kind of feel to it, which I found out later that's my style of music. I love jazz. I love funk. I love jazz, but I like that in my hip hop. I like that in my house music, so forth. So yeah, I gravitated to that more. I wrote my first rap in 5th grade, and it was about Martin Luther King, and then I got suspended and I couldn't perform it. I was like, I wasn't even that bad of a kid. It was just certain circumstances that would happen. So, you know, that was my first intro to writing music. So, you know, it was an experimental stage for me back then when our crew was coming together as far as Circle of Fire is concerned. And it continues on to this day. I still write. I wrote some verses yesterday. I'm working with another producer, and, you know, it never stops. It doesn't stop. My 6th grade in elementary all the way up to graduating to high school to now, I had 3 core friends, and we made routines together. We made raps together and everything else. For teens to find something to do was very hard. So me and my, I call him my cousin, who's my best friend, Moses Latif, who's part of Circle of Fire crew, Soul Shifters. We grew up together mainly, and then my other homie, Ari, he lived on the other side of town. We would ride our bikes all the way on the other side of town to go hook up with the other homie, and then work on routines, work on raps. I remember during one Christmas, and my mom bought me a boombox that you can record your vocals on, and you know it came with a mic. I forgot what those were called. They're like a karaoke box, and so we bought that, and I would take a tape that had a beat instrumental on it, and then record it to another tape, and you know we call it tape splicing. We would take a beat and then chop it, and then loop the beat and loop the beat and loop the beat till it was at least 2 minutes or 3 minutes long. Then we would rap over it. We were trying to use big words, and I was no scholar in school. I struggled in school. So, you know, I think that helped me read the dictionary. Because when I heard other rappers were doing that to big up their vocabulary, I was like, oh, maybe I should start reading the dictionary. And I think if rap wasn't there for me, I think my speech and everything would be worse than what it is when I speak to people. Because rapping definitely helped that out. Just writing pages and pages of raps, to all misspelled words. You know, just trying to be as lyrical as like some of our favorite rap groups at the time. Organized Confusion, Pharoah Monch, and Prince Poe, and those guys that came out in '92 with Fudge Pudge, and you know KRS-One and all Nas and all those guys. Like they were just the hardcore lyricisms, and we wanted to be that. So that's what we were trying to rap like. So, and we called ourselves Crossbreed. I don't know why we looked it up in a dictionary. We were like, oh yeah, crossbreed is when they crossbreed animals. We're a crossbreed of different styles. I was capital D. My first name is Dupont. Latif, I can't remember what he called himself, and my other homie called himself Mantis. And so yeah, we had a little rap trio, and we thought we were gonna be that young rap group that gets the contract, and you know, and gets to go tour and travel. You know, we were trying things out, and in the process, dancing at the same time. We would ride our bikes to the casinos, and then you know park them somewhere, put a lock on them, and then go into the lobby of the casino, break until the security come and kick us out. We leave for an hour, then come back to the same casino. Security's like, I told you guys to leave. Kick us out again. Back in those days, a lot of black folks in Vegas wasn't into breaking, wasn't into hip hop the way that me and my cousin was. You know, we felt like we were the only 2 black dudes that were into something that was created by us. Like, so we were like, where's everybody out? So then we gravitated more to the Filipinos who picked up breaking. And they went away with it, especially in California where breaking had died out, and it was the Filipino community that picked up breaking and started doing it tough. So we had a whole Filipino crew. It was 2 black guys with a whole Filipino crew going out battling with other crews. And after high school, I was like, it's time to get out of Vegas. I hated Vegas at that time. I hated Vegas. I don't hate Vegas now. That was, you know, that's a strong word. But for that time, me and my cousin, we were just plotting our escape. It was like escape from L.A., escape from New York, escape from Vegas. We were trying to get out of Vegas. So the Art Institute came to our school and pitched their story and whatnot. And they were like, hey, come to Seattle or go to Philadelphia. We got schools out there. But we were like, Seattle is close and it's on the West Coast, so let's go to Seattle. We didn't know anybody here. I didn't know what a Space Needle was. So we ended up moving to Seattle in '96. So me and my cousin, we moved to Seattle at that time in '96, and I remember it was the next day. It was the weekend. It was like a Saturday, so we got there on a Friday, and it was a Saturday. And I saw this rap group being interviewed at the park, and it was Source of Labor. Word Sayer, rest in peace, and Pindu and all those guys, Kamikaze, and they were being interviewed. I was like, that's a hip hop group right there. And they look dope too. They look like, you know, the total hip hop that I would be down for. So I was like, I got to figure out who those guys was. And then I found out later and stuff. And then Kamikaze was an ill dancer plus DJ and stuff too. I saw a video of him before I ever saw him dance in person. I don't think I ever seen him in dance in person, just a video. I was blown away. I was like, this kid got moves. So I was like, okay, Seattle got hip hop here. So me and my cousin, we were here for about a year. And it was after his birthday, we went to a party at Oddfellows Temple, Century Ballroom. There was a party up there. So we got to the party and we're in there, and the dudes from the south side of Sacramento were with us too. We're like, we're going to stay away from them dudes because they're all dressed up like, you know, advertising their sets and stuff. And they don't even know what city they're in. Meanwhile, there's like tons of, you know, people dressed up as, you know, gangs. And what little did I know, they were the disciples. Well, they started beating these dudes up, and we felt bad. We tried to break it up, and then they tried to beat us up. And then the bouncers started shooting, and they shot my cousin in the back. I was just shocked. I was like, this could have happened in Vegas so easily, yet it happened out here in Seattle. And so that's where I made the correlation, like, this is happening in every major city in the United States. A black man's life at 18 years old, we're, you know, it's endangered. My mom was like, you want to come back to Vegas? I was like, nope. That's how bad Vegas was. So we stayed in Seattle, and we just stayed the course. I didn't finish school. My cousin didn't finish school, but that wasn't the point. The point was meeting my soul family, which is my crew, Circle of Fire, and building with those guys and becoming a family and doing what we did after that as far as what really mattered. I was 20 when I met some of the crew members. We had fake IDs. I had a fake ID. I would take a little X-Acto knife and splice the numbers over. You can't do that now. So I was like, I could get into these 21 and over clubs because that's where the music is at. So we would go to a place called Power Plant, and it was down by the waterfront where the McDonald's is by the ferries. And it's like a furniture store now. But it was like a rave kind of party. They would play break beats and like a little bit of house, jungle and whatnot. Rarely ever hip hop. So we would show up because we were so hungry we would dance to anything. So we would show, me and my cousin would show up. Then these group of guys show up, and I'm like, wow, they got flavor. They got style. One of them was dancing all weird, which he was dancing house. Bob the Balance. My boy Free, who was with that group, Seth, Cody, Todd, who was from Hawaii. They were all misfits from different places. And they all converged and went to this club, and me and my cousin were misfits from another place, and then we just all gelled, and it wasn't really necessarily on a dance, and they liked what we did, and we liked what they did. We were all still green, but it was our humor and our laughter and our connection that made us very close. We had a really balance to our crew, and everybody symbolized different styles. Nobody looked the same. We were all so different. Not to mention, all of us are almost different races. Different nationalities, Mexican, Korean, white, black, Filipino, Japanese. We're like the melting pot of breaking crews. And when we came up with the name Circle of Fire, at that point, we were all moving into a house together up on Beacon Hill. And that was circa around 1999, 2000. We formed a crew probably around 98, 99. 99, we put out a video, a VHS video. And that tape went all over the world. Like, everybody shared that tape, dubbed that tape. It went from Germany to Africa to Japan and so forth, back to Seattle. The video was called A Journey into the Circle of Fire. We had DJ Cam, DJ Shadow. We had all these different types of music on there, Daft Punk, like... we put it all in there except for like rock or, you know, country or anything like that. It was stuff that we would normally dance to mixed with hip hop stuff. And then at the end of the video, we have a video of my whole crew imitating Backstreet Boys. I want it that way. And so after that, we got a call to battle at Battle of the Year, which is one of the biggest, you know, breaking battles at that time. And they had it in Hanover, Germany during their World's Fair in 2000, the year 2000. We did that. We put capoeira, house breaking, we put it all into our dance. and we did it on the world stage at Battle of the Year. It was at that time controversial that they didn't know what we were. You guys are breakers? You guys house dance? What do you guys do? We're like, we just do it all. Battle of the Year was called A Change in Direction in the year 2000, and it was us that was bringing that change in direction to just what breaking is. We went out in Battle of the Year, the structure is that you do your showcase, which is a performance. And if you get selected, you get the battle. Well, we did our showcase. Our showcase was super abstract. We had a stretch ball that we danced on. My boy Todd, very abstract dancer, painted himself all gray. We didn't know he was going to do that until the day of the show. And he didn't really even dance. His thing was more theatrical in his piece inside of the show. And all of us had like abstract things. So when our show was done, 50,000 people and another 10,000+ people at this World Fair watching. And when that was done, I felt like you can barely hear anybody clap. We're like, oh shit, did we do good? I hope we did okay. And little did we know, we innovated and motivated. And it was a shock to the whole world. So when that video came out, when people saw us there live, we didn't know the impact that we gave until after, like some years after. Oh my gosh, I seen you guys at Battle of the Year. It was amazing. I've never seen anything like that before. We didn't even get selected to battle. We were so disappointed because we really wanted to just battle. We didn't care about the show. We wanted to actually battle. And so we didn't get to do that, but it was our showcase that was the most influential and impacted a lot of people all over the world and put us on the map. But when I started traveling the world, oh man, it was a joy. It was like, oh, I get out of the United States and get to see what the rest of the world is doing. And when I went to Korea for the first time, of course it was culture shock. And we were there with like 5 or 6 other crews from different countries. They were having hard times, like, oh, you guys are not giving us this. We were having a blast. We were having the time of our life. We're in Korea. This is crazy. And then when we went to Germany, same thing. We just, with our groups, we just entertain ourselves. Like, yo, let's go walk around. Let's go look at stuff and take pictures and whatnot. Dance on the street. We had to jump through hoops in order to get our passports at the time. We had to fly back to Vegas and get our high school records and all this other stuff. It was crazy. Our first trip was Hawaii. We battled Wicked and Flowmaster at an event that was out there. And after that, I was like, I want to travel. I just want to get out of Seattle. I want to not go to Vegas. I want to get out of the United States if I can. And then Korea and then Germany after that. On top of that, when we would travel, people would say, yo, I love you guys. You guys influenced me to dance. And that also added on to the fire. It's like when we go places, we have people that admire our style and looked us up and know our history and things like that. There was a guy recently walked past him on the street. Orb, I was like, yo, what's up? He's like, yo, you gave me your cassette tape 20 years ago. And he showed me a picture of it. I don't even have this cassette tape. I was standing at Westlake Center going, hey, you like hip-hop music? Yo, listen to this. I got a album that I want you to hear. He kept that thing for 20-some years. I don't even have a copy of it. And so that shocked me. I was like, wow, that's crazy. You still have that tape? And he's like, bro, you influenced me with that music. It was crazy. And dude got pepper in his beard too. So I'm like, this is insane. So you just never know. For me, it was just, I just did my thing. I did it out of love and for fun, and didn't know it was going to influence people. The first one that sticks out is Out for Fame 98 with my crew. We were invited out to California to battle, and it was controversial because we ended up in the finals, which we never do because we always get voted wrong because they didn't know how to vote for us. You know, we'll destroy a crew. They'll still vote for the other crew because they were breaking more. So anyway, we battled this crew, Rhythm Bugs. A very popular breaking crew at the time. Reveal, Sean, Supreme, and a few other heads. We battled them, and I think we beat them. Then we had a tiebreaker, and then they gave it to them. And we were so upset. I wasn't as upset because I don't care about winning or losing. I've never been about that. But a couple of my crewmates did, and they argued the fact, and it was controversy. There's a video. There's a VHS tape about that battle and stuff too. So that was one of our popular ones, our popular battle, because in that battle I remember freestyling a couple of my moves and creating new moves while I was out there on the floor, and that's what we were about, was the whole freestyle aspect. That's why it's good that you don't know what the DJ is going to throw at you, so you can unwrap it like a present and freestyle to the music. Oh, so much drama back then. And then the second battle was more of a solo battle where I entered with 2 other dancers that are not from my crew. Eric Thurman, who's a good homie and Circle of Fire crew member, and then Poe, who's Style Elements. We entered together, and this was in Korea. We ended up winning and beating a crew called Rock Force. That really put our crew on the map. The Japanese were there watching too, and they were like, yo, we want to bring your crew to Japan after that. And so it kind of put us on the map, and that was one of my pivotal battles that I can remember in Korea in 1999. For our Circle of Fire shows, I would make the music for that. And then, of course, at the same time, making side projects, albums with my homie Eardrums, Alonzo Big Zo, who's Zulu. So, and it's funny, too, with Alonzo, he used to let us in the club at Art Bar, the famous Art Bar we used to go to where DVS would break at and the late Soul One would spin at, and we would see Fever and Battle and stuff. So Alonzo would let us in with our fake ID. He knew it was fake. He was like, but y'all can go in. I know what y'all doing. And let us go in and break. We were the only ones out there in the club dancing. So we started our first club night, 98, 99, Nations on Fifth Avenue, right under the monorail. You walk up the steps, and we had our club night every Monday and continued that all the way up to the War Room, which was like around 90 or 2006 and 7. The club nights we used to run in Seattle, that was probably the only other glue for our crew being in Seattle, because there was no other dance crews that were doing that. What that allowed us to do was bring our own DJs. So we became friends with a lot of dope DJs in Seattle. Supreme was one of them, but it was really hard to get him because, you know, Supreme, sharpshooters, and he's like high level. We would have the late Soul come through, Bumblebee, who moved back to Hawaii, and then Sean C. Now there's Magic Sean. Shout out to them, Big World Breaks. They were a band, a funk break band. We had them come and play. DV1 we would have come at the War Room and play for us, for sure. I remember there was the Music Academy that happened, the Red Bull Music Academy. We had Bismarcky and DJ Red Alert and Questlove come and spin for us. And I remember the late Bismarcky when he was spinning, he was just like, it looked like he wasn't moving when he was playing. He's just like, no facial expression or anything, but we were just like, yo, that's Bismarcky playing for us. This is crazy. So we just have guest DJs each week. And it was like we just never knew what they were going to play, so it was like a present. It definitely is polarizing as far as the Olympics because there's going to be rules. I like it being in the Olympics, but it's not going to be raw as it is, you know, some of the dopest, you know, events out there like Freestyle Session, and, you know, those are just raw battles. And, you know, sometimes the DJs can play whatever they want to play at the event. But when it's broadcast, yeah, it's the rules. I think there's that thin line that, you know, you can make money off of your art form, but sometimes you have to be a little cheesy to do it. That's the ebb and flow of, like, you know, do I allow myself to, you know, lose my integrity a little bit for something, or do I stick with the culture and just be solely that? The underground scene for hip-hop has always stayed underground, jams, events, dancing out on the street. I host park jams sometimes, you know, over at Junkins Park in the summertime, and put the boombox out and the music or the floor, and people will show up and dance. That's grassroots. That's always going to be what it is.